The dragon aspects are the leaders of the 5 dragonflights that watch over various aspects of Azeroth, and they were empowered by the Titans to do so, Aman'Thul empowering Nosdormu to watch over time and the pathways of fate and destiny, Norgannon empowering Malygos to guard all of the magics on the world, Aonar empowering both Alexstrasza and Ysera, allowing them to be the safeguards of living creatures and nature, respectively, and then Khaz'groth empowering Neltharion to guard the earth and the deep places of the planet. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Before they were aspects taking on visage forms, they were just mere proto-dragons segmented by their different clans, just scavenging the world for food and shelter. Proto-dragons are essentially descendants of the elementals who remained on Azeroth instead of being imprisoned on the elemental plane. They eventually transformed into creatures of flesh and blood. Now one day, while the proto-dragons were scouring Azeroth for food, there was this odd proto-dragon who decided to stray from the pack. He ended up drinking from a river that was corrupted by the old god Yogg-Saron, which in turn corrupted this proto-dragon. That proto-dragon came to be Galakrond, the nastiest proto-dragon of all. I mean, literally pretty nasty. Drinking this corrupted water made him grow in size, and once discovered by the other proto-dragon clans and confronted, he ate them. He just swallowed them whole, chewed them up, and then vomited them back out. These vomited proto-dragons became sentient and were known as the Not Living. They were undead proto-dragons who served Galakrond. Alexstrasza, her brother Dralod, and her younger sister Ysera ventured through Northrend. Alexstrasza was quite intelligent, but her younger sister Ysera was born sick and smaller than the average proto-dragon. Their brother went missing, so Alexstrasza went searching for him, leaving Ysera behind in a safe place. While she scoured Northrend, she met another proto-dragon, Malygos. Malygos agreed to help Alexstrasza since he was also very smart and wanted to show off his intellect. They eventually found Dralod, but he was dead. The proto-dragon clans went out to hunt caribou. Ysera, being much smaller than the rest, had a lot of trouble, so Alexstrasza would offer her kills, but Ysera declined since she wanted to earn it. Galakrond flies in, terrifies the proto-dragons, and then leaves. Neltharion, part of the Black Dragonflight, pops up and he taunts the other dragons for being afraid. Now, there was a gold proto-dragon by the name of Talanixa who acted as the leader of the proto-dragons and wanted to put a stop to Galakrond and the Not Living. Ysera believed that peace could be made with Galakrond. A bluish-green proto-dragon, Koros, encouraged Ysera only because he knew it would be her demise, and this outraged Alexstrasza. Now Malygos did not like Talanixa very much, but he disliked Koros much more. Malygos spied on Koros and his groupies, and he followed them to a meeting that they had with Galakrond. On the way, Koros and his clan would imitate Galakrond by cannibalizing proto-dragons that they saw. This of course shocked Malygos. Koros spotted Malygos and began to fight him along with 2 other proto-dragons. Neltharion swooped in and saved Malygos, which made them become friends. Galakrond then spotted them and was about to attack, but not before they were then saved by a bronze dragon by the name of Nosdormu. So the 3 of them became friends. Koros wanted Galakrond's protection, so he warned him of Talanix's assault. Galakrond didn't want Koros to be a threat in the future, so he decided to just devour the smaller dragon. While his groupies flew off, Malygos returned to the others and saw a conflict between Ysera and Talanixa, since there were cannibalizing proto-dragons flying around. Ysera wanted them to still live, but Talanixa was pretty much like,
"This entire city must be purged."
okay, well, wrong lore character, but you get the idea. Ultimately, they agreed to quarantine the cannibalizing proto-dragons in a canyon, so Talanixa did just that. Then she collapsed the entire canyon on them, killing them. Alexstrasza and Nosdormu were both shocked by this. Ysera then escaped to plead with Galakrond for peace. He wasn't having any of that, so he almost killed Ysera, but not before her big sister swooped in to save her. Talanixa then gathered her proto-dragon army, accompanied by Malygos, who trusted her a lot more now after Krosa's death. They went to face Galakrond for another assault. Malygos devised a plan to fly higher since Galakrond wouldn't be able to. First, Talanixa liked this plan, but she quickly went against it since she didn't want it to seem like she was bowing to Malygos. Talanixa and Malygos began to fight, but Neltharion and Nosdormu came to his aid. Even with this, Neltharion still egged Malygos to fight Talanixa, which enraged her, so Malygos, Nosdormu, and Neltharion retreated. The Not Living lured Talanixa and her proto-dragons into a trap where Galakrond shattered through the ground and killed her, then ate her army for his own. Malygos then broke off to search for Alexstrasza and Ysera. Watcher Tyr then appears. He was created by the Pantheon, and and empowered by Agrimar to fight the old gods during that war. Tyr watched the proto-dragons in silence and wanted to help them. He showed off an undead proto-dragon to get Ysera's attention, but she fought him because she thought that he was going to kill it. Malygos shows up to talk with Tyr, and Ysera ended up freeing the undead proto-dragon, which promptly tried to kill her, but Malygos acted swiftly to kill it. They then ventured around and spotted Galakron chasing after Neltharion and Nosdormu. Alexstrasza, Malygos, and Tyr joined them to fight Galakron. Tyr told the proto-dragons to leave while he fought Galakron alone. Now, much later, Tyr met up with Alexstrasza, Ysera, Malygos, Nosdormu, and Neltharion to let them know that Galakron was sleeping in Storm Peaks, and it was a perfect time to strike. They confronted Galakron, and the 4 proto-dragons, except Ysera, but including Tyr, went to battle Galakron. Now, he grew much larger, and with a gust of wind, he scattered the proto-dragons. Then he pursued after Ysera. Tyr was able to stun him with his hammer and began to beat him up. Tyr's belt, which was known as the Spark of Tyr, was able to give him hidden powers, which gave him the upper hand on Galakron. Except this spark actually knocked free off Tyr's body, which allowed Galakron to bite his hand right off. Malygos attempted to save Tyr, but they noticed that this became a losing battle, and they all retreated with Tyr to a frozen lake. Tyr then vanished in the distance to never be seen again. He was presumably killed by the not living. Malygos was seen as the leader of the proto-dragons at this point after Talonyx's death, since he was the oldest. This was too much of a burden on him, so he handed the mantle off to Alexstrasza. The 5 proto-dragons went to face Galakron once and for all, in Dragonblight. Through this battle, Malygos was able to lodge a giant boulder down Galakron's throat, incapacitating him as he tried to dislodge it. Malygos used his ice breath to keep it lodged, and Neltharion blasted one of the not living at Galakron's throat, ultimately killing him by choking to death. Then the Watchers Freya, Arcadus, Ra, and Memoron showed up to let them know that Tyr wasn't dead, and they brought him to safety. Tyr had convinced the Keepers, due to their courage against Galakron, to empower the proto-dragons on behalf of the Titans. Aman'Thul empowered Keeper Ra, who then empowered Nosdormu. Norgannon empowered Memoron, who empowered Malygos. Khaz'groth empowered Arcadus, who empowered Neltharion, and Aonar empowered Freya, who empowered both Alexstrasza and Ysera. Thus the dragon aspects were born, and their visage forms came to be. This was able to easily be done due to an event called the Embrace. It's a magnificent celestial event where Azeroth's 2 moons, the White Lady and the Blue Child, are working in conjunction. This happens approximately once every 430 years. And now to theory by the dragon clans as to why the dragon aspects were able to handle such an immense power from the Keepers. However, the dragon aspects created a rumor that they were formed from the remains of Galakron. This was to seal away the truth of Galakron so no one would follow in his footsteps. Neltharion, being the most devious of the dragon aspects, created a lair near the Night Elf city of Suramar, where he stored one of the pillars of creation, Khaz'groth's hammer. Neltharion pulled his power from the Obsidian Citadel, where he defended the Dragon Isles, as well as Aberys, the underground fortress where he conducted experiments. During this time, he warmed up a lot to the blue dragonflight aspect, Malygos. Neltharion then created a race of Drakthir to watch over the lands, since there was a rising clan of proto-dragons known as the Primal Incarnates. He created the Drakthir as the perfect soldiers, mixing dragons with mortal beings. When the Keepers uplifted the dragon aspects and their flights, there were proto-dragons who resisted this gift. These were the Incarnates. He used an artifact known as the Oathbinder to control the Drakthir. Rosageth, one of the leaders of the Primal Incarnates, attacked Neltharion and broke the Oathbinder. The old gods whispered to Neltharion and gave him the powers to seal Rosageth away. With the Oathbinder broken, Neltharion believed the Drakthir would become a risk, so he told Malygos everything. Neltharion led the Drakthir into caverns under the Forbidden Reach, where Malygos froze them with his magic. Then the Winterscorn War took place between the Winterscorn Vrykul and the Earthen. The Earthen were Titanforged beings resembling dwarves, and Tyr fought alongside them. The Vrykul had the upper hand, so Tyr called to the dragon aspects for help. The aspects swooped in and laid siege to the Winterscorn Vrykul. The war ended by a combined spell conjured from Ysera and Nosdormu to put all the Vrykul in an endless sleep underneath northern Kalimdor. Then we had the War of the Ancients. At the start of this war, the old gods began calling out louder to Neltharion. He began seeing in Azeroth where his black dragonflight ruled. By the wishes of the old gods, Neltharion created the Dragon Soul, along with his goblin servant, Meklo, who also forged his armor. Neltharion empower the Dragon Soul, making it more difficult for the other aspects to see into it. Queen Ashara opens up a portal in the Well of Eternity to allow the Burning Legion to wreak havoc on Azeroth. The aspects congregated at Alexstrasza's lair, except Nozdormu, who was trapped in some sort of time anomaly by the old gods. So his mate, Sorodormi, was there in his place. Neltharion pulled Malygos aside and showed him the Dragon Soul. He persuaded Malygos to convince the other aspects to put some of their power into it, and he obliged. So they did just that, because they believed it could defeat the Burning Legion. The aspects then made their way to Nazjatar, where Night Elves resided. Now the old gods were speaking to Neltharion this whole time, and as time went on he became more crazed. This wasn't the snarky Neltharion that poked fun at the other aspects for trembling in fear at the sight of Galakrond. No, this was Deathwing. Neltharion took the Dragon Soul and shot it through Nazjatar, killing plenty of demons but also killing plenty of Night Elves. The other dragon aspects watched in horror and went after Neltharion. Malygos' forces encircled him, but Neltharion took them all out with the Dragon Soul. Since all the aspects put their powers into the soul, Neltharion was able to hold control over them and paralyze them all in mid-air. With the dragon aspects paralyzed, innocent Night Elves slain, and the Well of Eternity in ruins, Deathwing the Destroyer flew off, with the most powerful weapon on Azeroth, the Dragon Soul, now known as the Demon Soul. The aftermath of the War of the Ancients had Alexstrasza and Ysera at Mount Hyjal. Nozdormu finally shows up after being slapped around a bit by the old gods. The aspects then placed a magical acorn from Ganir in the soil. Ganir is a very tall tree located in the Emerald Dream that the wild god Aviana watches over. This seed began to sprout into what is called the original World Tree of Azeroth, Nordrassil. And if we take a look over at Malygos, well, he wasn't doing so good. His entire fleet had perished, and he felt the destruction of the Well of Eternity and betrayal of Neltharion towards the other aspects was his fault, because he convinced them to put their power into the soul. He flew over to his lair in Caldera in Northrend, where he rested for thousands of years. Slowly going mad in the process, he was essentially just wilting away. Now, taking a look over at Deathwing, he went back to his lair in High Mountain. He slowly warped into a much more demonic form. Malfurion Stormrage opened up a portal from the Emerald Dream to Deathwing's lair and stole the Demon Soul back. But then Illidan and Verothin, who is one of Queen Ashara's generals, captured Malfurion, stole it back, and then headed back to Nazjatar, where Manoroth was, and they gave it to him. Deathwing then realized that it was gone, goes after Manoroth for it, and he actually succeeds, but then an enormous surge of power from the soul made him lose his grip, and he was spiraling down. But then a Nozdormu from 1,000 years in the future appeared, takes his Demon Soul, and brings it to that Nozdormu's timeline. They defeated the Burning Legion, and the Demon Soul went back to its correct timeline. And then the aspects sealed it away so Deathwing could never manipulate it again. The destruction of the Well of Eternity and the Great Sundering is what made Azeroth split apart. Deathwing vowed to destroy everything, so he kinda did just that and ravaged his way through Kalimdor, essentially sinking most of the continent into the ocean. Hole in the High Mountain didn't really like that Deathwing was cramping his style by having his lair in High Mountain, so an uprising of the Drogbar, who served Deathwing at that point, stole the Hammer of Khaz'goroth from Deathwing's lair and gave it to Holm. Holm then used it to banish Deathwing into Deepholm. 10,000 years later, the Dark Portal was opened up by Medivh and Gul'dan, which awoke Deathwing from his slumber. The Alliance of Stormwind and the Orcish horde who came through the Dark Portal began to fight. Deathwing noticed this and believed that the Orcs were the key to restore the Black Dragonflight to glory, but he didn't want to catch the attention of the other aspects, so he took on the form of a human from Stormwind and traveled to Lordaeron. He was pretty much there to downplay the Orcs' assault onto Stormwind, saying that it was a fabricated nonsense, even after the humans of Stormwind were pleading to Lordaeron for help. After he knew that Lordaeron would not send aid, he traveled south and took on the form of a Blackrock Orc, where he lived amongst the Orcs for months. Gul'dan, Blackhand, and Orgrim Doomhammer liked Deathwing. Blackhand was then killed by Orgrim in a Mak'gora, but this only pleased Deathwing. Humans began rising to power amongst Azeroth, and Alexstrasza's Red Dragonflight was figuring out how to best deal with them. Are they too stupid and dangerous, thus should they be destroyed, or do they deserve to be educated? Alexstrasza then officiated an important day amongst the dragonflights called Visage Day. This allowed dragons from their respective dragonflights to create visage forms for themselves. A bronze dragon by the name of Chronormu was having a meltdown trying to figure out what their visage form should be. Chronormu had a meeting with someone of the blue dragonflight named Caligos. Chronormu asked Caligos how he chose his form. Caligos revealed his visage form to Chronormu and stated that most dragons typically picked a more elaborate form, but he chose a human since they were approachable and blend in well with the mortals. Caligos also suggested that they should pick a name that goes with their visage form, like his is Calic. Chronormu then met up with Nozdormu on advice for their visage form. Chronormu asked Nozdormu to just look into the future to tell the rambling dragon what they picked as a visage. Nosdormu declined as he did not want to sway their conscience. When it was time for Chronormu to take on the form of a visage, she finally did as a female gnome named Chromie. Coming up on the second war, the Horde was still weakened from the first war, and Deathwing knew that if the Alliance forces united that they could defeat the Horde. Deathwing was also worried about the dragon aspects finding out about the Horde, so they would have no chance at that point. Deathwing knew that he had to find the Dragon Soul. After the War of the Ancients, a spell was cast on it so no dragon could wield it, but an orc still could. Deathwing granted visions to an orc named Zulued, the chieftain of the Dragonmaw clan. The visions were his clan riding Rylix through Draenor. The chieftain wanted that, so Deathwing sent him to Redridge Mountains. The Dragon Soul was hidden beneath the mountains, guarded by Oristraz of the Red Dragonflight. The chieftain ordered his greatest warlock, Necros, to retrieve the soul. Alexstrasza could sense that the ward was breaking, but she was worried that Oristraz was not warning her. So Alexstrasza then headed there with some of the Red Dragonflight. Deathwing taught Necros how to use the Dragon Soul, so as Alexstrasza was approaching, Necros used it to enslave her and her Dragonflight, right as the Horde made their way into Cosmodon. Alexstrasza was then held captive at Grimbatol as Dragonmaw took control of it. While here, she was forced to lay eggs. Anyways, you get the idea, and just like that, everything was going according to plan for Deathwing. Alexstrasza's consort, Coralstraz, also known as Crassus, went to Malygos to help rescue Alexstrasza. Malygos didn't want anything to do with that life anymore, but Crassus was able to convince Malygos to help since Deathwing was still alive, and Malygos saw this as an opportunity to redeem himself. Crassus then visited both Ysera and Nosdormu, who agreed to help as well. This assault upon Grimbatol, led by Crassus, was also accompanied by his dwarf warrior friend, Falstad Dragon Reaver, the High Elven Ranger, Varisa Windrunner, and the young Kirantor mage, Ronan, as well as the aspects. They entered Grimbatol, beat the heck out of Deathwing, and chased him away. Then Ronan was able to destroy the Dragon Soul and return the aspect's power to the 4 other aspects. And then Alexstrasza ate Necros. Now after this moment, the aspects head away to heal for years. Well, most of them anyways. When the third war occurred, none of the dragon aspects had any involvement. The only thing of real importance that occurred was that the World Tree Nordrizel was sacrificed to defeat Archimonde. So Fandral Staghelm and the Druids created a new World Tree off the coast of Kalimdor, Teldrassil. Both Alexstrasza and Nosdormu were asked to bless the tree, but both of them declined. Nosdormu was trapped between various timelines as the aspects healed. He noticed a strange anomaly over in Kalimdor and convinced both Crassus and Ronan to investigate it. War Chief Thrall had also sent to the great warrior Broxigar to investigate it as well. They all met up and got sucked into a hole through the fabric of time, landing 10,000 years in the past right before the Burning Legion first attacked Azeroth. The champion succeeded, but Broxigar was killed by Sargeras, the leader of the Burning Legion, after striking him, which at this moment is the only mortal to do so. Crassus and Ronan were brought back to their correct timeline, and Nosdormu thanked them. Crassus did bring forward some blue dragonflight eggs to help restore that dragonflight. This is the only time an aspect actually allowed the timeline to be altered. Now Malygos sensed the power of the Sunwell in Lordaeron, so he sent a young Caligos to investigate it. Caligos went with another member of the blue dragonflight, Terragosa. They did some investigating, and Calyx stayed behind while Terragosa went over to the Nexus. She wanted to save the race of the Nether Dragons from extinction, so she summoned a whole bunch of them at the Nexus to draw from its power. They became enraged and then woke up Malygos. In his current semi-insane state, he absorbed the magic of all the Nether Dragons. Then Calyx showed up a bit too late.